Started in just a minute. Come on in, everyone. We welcome you today. And look, get people just a second to get their computers up and running and ready to roll and listen today. Time to turn on our listening ears. All right, with that, we'll get started. Hi, I'm Allie Stiefel. I'm the director of the Regeneron Science Talent Search at Society for Science. We are delighted that you're here today. I'm joined today by two very special colleagues. We'll have them wave and then they can introduce themselves a bit further here in a moment. I'm joined today by Elaine Edwards, who is the Regeneron STS Senior Specialist, and Dr. Jenna DeLuca. And Jenna can wave at you. You're going to hear a lot from Jenna today. She is our Scientific Integrity Officer and joined us a couple of months ago here at the Society. We are very glad that you've chosen to spend a little bit of time with us this afternoon to learn a little bit more about the Science Talent Search, but also hopefully a lot more about scientific integrity, what that means for student researchers like you, what that means for supportive adults and mentors, teachers, whatever your role is, you play an important part in this process. So we're really glad that you're here. We really believe that learning these skills now will set you up for a very successful career as a researcher or a science literate citizen. So very important to think about how these lessons will teach us longer term, not just for something like a college application or competition. Before we launch into the meat of our session today, I do want to make sure that we give you a little overview of the Science Talent Search. If this is your first interaction or taste of what the competition is, you're going to get a little bit of that today, but not too much. If you want a little bit more, never fear. We have a YouTube page, Regeneron STS, that is full of dozens of informational webinars. Several are fresh from this year, and many others are still relevant from past years, where we do deep dives into things like the rules, eligibility, application tips from our judges. So please do check out those past webinars to learn a little bit more about the program itself. Our session today, like we said, is very relevant to your application as you think about all the broader things involved in science research at the high school level. And so this information will be relevant not just for STS applicants, but for any high school or even middle school student who's doing a research project or wants to apply to STS this year. The application is open now through November 6th, including our sister competition, which is Regeneron ISEF. Both of these competitions and our middle school competition are owned and produced by Society for Science. And so we're the nonprofit that's been running them for 80 plus years. And that's who the three of us work for. We want to make that clarification. With that, I'll turn things over to Elaine to give you a little overview of what is STS.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie. And thank you all so much for being here. Like Allie said, we did want to start off with just a quick program overview, just in case you are joining us for the first time or even could just use a refresher. So the Regeneron Science Talent Search is the nation's oldest and most prestigious science research competition for high school seniors. As Allie mentioned, you can learn more about our history and about process and eligibility requirements in our other webinar recordings and on some resources that we'll share at the end of this session. But the basics are that to apply to our competition, students submit a free online application that includes essays, recommendations from teachers and mentors, and more, including the submission of an original research paper. From that applicant pool, our judges select the top 300 scholars and the top 40 finalists. Each scholar receives a $2,000 prize, as does their school, to use for additional scientific initiatives at the school. And so that's $2,000 per scholar. The top 40 finalists will receive a minimum of $25,000 and an all expenses paid trip to Washington, D.C. for finals week in March of each year. And if they place in the top 10, they can win between $40,000 and $250,000, which is the largest academic prize in the United States. So while the research is important in this competition process, it isn't the only factor. What distinguishes our program from others is that we are seeking future leaders in STEM. So these are individuals who show strong scientific aptitude and independence, but are also leaders in their various communities. And as we know, one of the key characteristics of any leader is being a person of integrity, which is very important to our application process and one of the reasons that we wanted to have this discussion today.
That's right. And thank you so much, Elaine. Um, with that, before I turn things over to Jenna, just to elaborate a little bit more on what Elaine said about why integrity matters to us at Society for Science, and what that should mean for you as a student researcher. Integrity is important in all walks of life. This means, what are you doing when no one is looking, right? Are you doing the right thing? Are you doing the wrong thing? And when it comes to science, we think this is a field where it's especially important. You think about what happens when people don't have integrity in the scientific process. When you do things like fake your data, make up fake resources, and then other people try to build upon your work. Wow, things can really go awry, and wow, they can really cause damage to people, their health, their homes, their communities. I'm sure you can think of dozens of ways that this can kind of go south when we start to build processes based on things that are not fact. So it's really important for the scientific community and everyone who benefits from it, which is literally everyone on the planet, that we do things right. And it's important for us to learn that even while we're young. It's really tempting. We run big competitions with big prizes. We get that sometimes you want to sound impressive. There is a fine line between wanting to sound impressive and actually representing what you actually did, which honestly, for me, as the person who runs this 85-year-old institution for the past decade, it's more impressive to me and everyone who helps judge this when you tell the truth. And so that's one of the reasons we're here to talk today. We want to help unblur some lines that maybe might feel blurry to you. We know that this is an ever-changing landscape, right? Especially with things like AI, data being available on the internet from all sorts of places, and project ideas are easy to come by. So where do you give credit? Where do you cite things? What do you do, right? How do we get started here? And how do we make sure we're all doing the right thing and that we're all on the same page? So that's where Jen is going to come in and give us a little bit of that overview today. The last thing I want to say is we understand that with great knowledge, like all of you have, if you're here as the educators, as the students who are doing the research, when you have great knowledge and great ideas, there's also a great responsibility. And so we don't want you to feel like you can't try if you want to do research and this seems overwhelming. We're here to help and support. And we know that our rules will have to change here and there, as they do annually anyways in our rules book. So know that we're all on the same team, and that team is wanting to do things the right way. And so we're always here for conversation and to answer any questions you have by email. If you have questions throughout the session today, you can leave them in the chat. We do have a hard stop, and so we may or may not be able to answer all of the questions in the chat today. But if we don't get to them, we will be happy to answer your questions, especially if it's about a specific project that might be better handled by email anyway. So know that we're here to help, and we'll provide an email address at the end of this session. With that, I would love to introduce Dr. Jenna DeLuca, who joined our team at the Society in February, but has a wealth of knowledge on this topic and has really helped us and guided us through many of our new screening procedures. So welcome, Jenna.
Thanks, Allie. So I will jump right into talking about scientific integrity in research. So a little bit about me before I start about my career. I started, like many of you, doing research in middle school and high school, and that is what started my passion for science. I went on to get my bachelor's degree in biology with a chemistry minor from St. Mary's College. From there, I got my PhD in microbiology, though I've mostly focused on immunology from Miami University. And then from there, I did a postdoctoral fellowship at the NIH, at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease in the Translational Immunobiology Unit. So from there, I came to the Society in February, like Ali said, and started working on the fascinating research that all of you are doing. So why is scientific integrity important? It's not just important for your science fair projects, it's important for all scientific research. We're seeing large numbers of paper retractions, and much of this is due to misconduct for things like unreliable data and falsifications. So I just put a couple headlines from articles that I found about misconduct in research. And that is what is the majority of retracted scientific publications. And we're seeing these retractions are just exploding at an enormous rate. So what's really important is, how do we know what's true in science? Science really relies on trust. We have to be able to trust that what we're reading in these published articles and in what you all are presenting is fact and can be relied on data and factual evidence. So just to back up a bit, to define scientific integrity, scientific integrity involves conducting and communicating science with transparency, honesty, and accountability. So it's not just bad science or outright fraud, but it's also fostering trust. So without scientific integrity, we lose our credibility and the ability to make informed decisions on reliable findings. So just to kind of get us going, we have some polls that we're going to do throughout this. And one of them is here. We're going to see which of the following you all would classify as scientific misconduct. So a poll should be popping up. So the first one would be, if you would vote on this, would changing a data point to better fit your hypothesis count as scientific misconduct, yes or no? The second one would be forgetting to cite a source for a minor detail. The third would be making up data for an experiment that didn't happen. Fourth would be copying a paragraph directly from ChatGPT without a citation. And the fourth one would be accidentally miscalculating a result. So we'll leave this up for a little bit, let some people get some votes in, and then we can go through it. Okay, so I think for the most part, this has stopped. Okay, so the first one, 85% of you think that changing a data point to better fit a hypothesis is misconduct. Yes, this is absolutely, I think this is pretty straightforward. This would be a case of scientific misconduct. We always want to go with what the data point actually is and what a readout specifically is. So that would be something that we would consider scientific misconduct. So the next one looks like we're half and half here almost. 45% said that forgetting to cite a source for a minor detail was not scientific misconduct, where 55% of you did. Now this one is a tough one, and there's not necessarily right or wrong answers here, but yeah, we all make mistakes. So forgetting to cite a source for a minor detail or something that you may think is just common knowledge, but it is important to make sure that we do our best to find sources and find information to back up whatever we are claiming. So the third one, this was overwhelming. Making up data for an experiment that didn't happen. Absolutely. This 100% is a case of scientific misconduct. And I think most of you, many of you are in agreement and understand that this is something that absolutely cannot happen and leads to serious distrust and can have serious consequences if this is something that gets published or gets out into the public. Cool. All of you are in agreement for the fourth one as well, copying a paragraph directly from ChatGPT without a citation. Absolutely. This has some issues for various reasons. Whether or not ChatGPT should be used is one thing, but also without using a citation for sure is something that absolutely should not be doing. That would be the same as copying a paragraph from a journal article without giving citation. Always should give credit where credit is due, especially when it's something that we did not write in our own words. Okay, accidentally miscalculating a result. This one's another mixed one, but it does seem like the majority think that this is not scientific misconduct. Yeah, I think I would agree that if it's an accident, a true accident, then yeah, it's not scientific misconduct. Okay. So moving on, we are going to do a series of case studies. We have 7 case studies that regard instances of potential scientific misconduct so that you all can work through them and get an idea of some potential real world situations. So with each scenario, you're going to vote in a multiple choice poll. Okay, so the first one. Your science project examines the effect of a protease inhibitor on cell growth. 2 rounds of experimentation generate the same outcome that's in support of your hypothesis and results in increased cell growth. However, during the testing for the 3rd replicate, all your cells died, even though your experimentation was seemingly identical. You decide to discard this 3rd set of results and proceed as if they did not occur. So a poll should be popping up with 3 options. The first being it's appropriate to throw out the 3rd set of results. The second would be it's only appropriate if you do more testing. So you can still throw out the 3rd set of results, but do more testing. And the third choice, or yeah, C would be it's not appropriate under any circumstances. So yeah, we'll give this about a minute. Okay, it looks like the results are slowing down, so we'll stop it. So yeah, it looks like there were 2 options. I appreciate that none of you said that it's appropriate because it is not. And between it's only appropriate if you do more testing and it's not appropriate under any circumstance. I would agree with C that this is not appropriate under any circumstance. Something happened here, and whether or not it was related to the actual results of the experimentation or not, something happened here. And it's important to figure out what happened, but it's more important that data is data, whether it agrees with your hypothesis or not, or whether it's negative data or not. It's important to keep all data no matter what it is. This also is an example that all data should be included in your logbook or your lab notebook. So it shouldn't be possible to discard sets of results. Everything should be included in your lab notebook or logbook, and it should be included as you're doing it, as the results come out. So this shouldn't be something that should be easily discarded or discarded in general. And it should be something that should be kept and analyzed. That could be a project in and of itself, figuring out why your cells died. Similar cases happened to me in grad school and in my postdoc, and ended up being little mini projects in and of themselves, trying to figure out, okay, what happened here, what went wrong, what went right, and working backwards to figure out why your cells died. So this one, I would say it's appropriate to also do more testing, but it's, so B is partially correct. You should also do more testing, but the primary answer here is that this isn't appropriate. So we'll move to the second case study. This is about open source information. So for your science project, you plan to use a custom coded data visualization tool. Your experimentation is going well and your data collection went smoothly, but you're struggling with writing the code. You find an open source code in an online forum and copy sections into your project files, just incorporating your data. While the online forum requested attribution for commercial use, you did not think that this applied and you neglected acknowledgement. So for this, we will have 3 choices, similar choices. It's appropriate. It's only appropriate if the source of the code is disclosed, or it's not appropriate under any circumstance. Okay. So it looks like we have much of the answers, so we will go through it. So we have mixed results here between it's appropriate. We had a couple votes for that. It's only or one vote. We had, and then kind of half and half between it's only appropriate if the source of the code is disclosed and it's not appropriate under any circumstance. My take on this is code is kind of a finicky thing, but I think the important thing here is disclosing that what we worked on and what we got from outside sources. So while this would not necessarily be for commercial use, it is use and it's not something that we came up with on our own. So it's important to give credit for things that we didn't do ourselves. So I could kind of see all of these answers a little bit, but it's important to make sure that credit is given and it's not being construed that this was something that was developed entirely on our own, things like that. So the next one, you are completing a microbiology project looking at the effect of pH on bacterial growth, and you document your findings with photographs of the plates. Weeks go by, and then your science fair is rapidly approaching. When you're putting together your poster, you cannot find the images you took of the neutral pH plates that were showing bacterial growth. You search online for pictures of petri dishes with bacterial growth similar to what you remembered on your plates. You edit the image you find to more closely resemble your setup and image style and claim it as your own. So we will do another poll of it's appropriate. It's only appropriate if the image is cited as created by student or it's not appropriate under any circumstance. Okay, we'll give this another couple seconds, just let the last few trickle in. Think we're maybe stopping. So for this one, yes, I agree with 80% of you that this is not appropriate under any circumstance. So while I appreciate that the student in this did the work on their own and had the misfortune of losing a photo, it is never okay to take a picture that is not your own and claim it as your own. So this also leads back to if you are filling out your logbook or your lab notebook as you're getting data and results, things like this are less likely to happen. But when situations like this do occur, it's always best to be honest and not to claim work that isn't your own. Even though you did the work, just lost the picture. Also, for cases like this, it's important to consider doing more quantitative methods instead of just qualitative. So you have numbers are associated with your data instead of just pictures or other things like that, so that you have multiple ways to back up the same the same question or the same piece of data. So yeah, I appreciate that many of you are in agreement with that one, that this is never okay. So we will go to our next one. So AI and research. This is a hot topic. So we'll see what all of you think of this one. So you spend your summer completing your research project at your local university. You spend hours in the lab each day collecting and analyzing data. The time comes for you to write your research report, but you're swamped with classwork, exams, and college applications. You decide to use ChatGPT to write your report. You submit all the data you collected and ask the tool to write the document, including citing references and writing your bibliography. So this one, we will have the same poll. It's appropriate. It's only appropriate if the full use of AI was disclosed, or it's not appropriate under any circumstance. Okay, so I think we'll stop this one here. We got quite a few results. So while I appreciate that much, anytime AI is used, it should be disclosed in your application or where, however you're using it. But kind of like we talked about in the beginning, using this to write your entire report and not and citing it or not is not necessarily appropriate, especially when it comes to writing things like conclusions. We want you to be thinking through these things yourself, making your own conclusions, not what ChatGPT told you. And also, AI makes mistakes. So not only would this be flagged in AI detection software, but it does make mistakes, especially in terms of citations. So we have a little example for you for this one. So I asked Google Gemini to write a short scientific review commentary on FcRl1 with citations. This is the protein that I studied whenever I was in grad school, so I felt like I could talk about it the best. And it wrote a summary that was generally correct. But the important thing was whenever it created citations. So the first one that it included in its bibliography is a company website to purchase a protein. There wasn't actual scientific, information on that website. The same for the second one. The third one was actually that has my grad school advisor in it, and I know that he did not write this paper. And the real citation is the one that is in to the far right of your screen there, where the title is the same, but the authors are completely different, and it was a different journal. Some of the some of the citations were correct. Some of them were mostly correct, just had wrong dates. And then the last one, the same situation as the above. It had the incorrect authors and incorrect journal article. So I ran it a second time, mostly by accident, and was not aware that I was going to get an entirely different result, but I got entirely different citations for this one as well. And I'll draw your attention to the one that I have circled. That is actually a paper that I published. So all of the information after the 2021, I don't know if you can see my mouse circling, after the 2021 is correct. So that's the title of my paper, that's the journal, the volume and issue, but all of those authors are incorrect, especially because none of those are me, and that is my paper. So we know that AI makes mistakes, it hallucinates. So it's really important to verify the information that you're getting as an output, making sure that what you're putting in is good so that what you get out is good. So a question like what I had on the last slide is just write a short scientific commentary isn't necessarily a good prompt, and I didn't get good results out. So that is something to keep in mind for AI.
And project quickly here, Jenna, just to clarify for everyone, if you're here specifically for the science talent search, we have a rule, it's in the rules book the last 2 years. You are not to use ChatGPT or any other AI tool to draft your research report. And that is grounds for disqualification. And it's not really worth the risk. You know your research the best. If you've actually done it, don't let AI mess things up for you, because it is not as smart as you think it is when it comes to getting things right the way that you want them to be right, to put your best self forward.
Exactly. So for our fifth case study, this one is about you are inspired by the work that's being done in the department where your aunt works at your local university. While your aunt's lab is not doing the type of work that would aid in your science project, she offers to put you in touch with one of her colleagues to help mentor you. Your project goes well, and the following fall, you decide to apply to STS. Since your aunt only knew your mentor casually, you don't disclose that your mentor is your aunt's colleague, and that is how you gain access to their lab. So we have another similar poll. It's appropriate. It's only appropriate if you disclose the relationship between your aunt and your mentor, or it's not appropriate under any circumstance. So we'll give this a couple more seconds for people to get their votes in. Okay, so this one, it's totally fine if you used your aunt to get access to a lab. But what's really important here is that this is only appropriate if you disclose this relationship. Maybe somebody else that didn't have an aunt that had a colleague didn't get that same access. So that's something we want to know. It's absolutely something it's allowable, and of course, use all the connections that you can. But this is something that would absolutely need to be disclosed and would only be appropriate if it is disclosed.
Right. And just to clarify further, we feel very strongly we don't want to discriminate against students who have parents or relatives who are scientists, and that's what got you interested in science to begin with. So to explain one, why that is allowed to begin with, but the disclosure piece is super important. Because if we, down the line, we're looking into your application, it's a really good one, but then we find an undisclosed familial connection, you're published on a paper with your parent, then that could be a red flag that not everything else is on the up and up, right? And so we disclosure, if you're ever in doubt, more you can tell us, the more context, the more disclosure, the better.
Yeah. So on that note, in a very similar case study, you're inspired by the work being done in the department where your aunt works. While your aunt does not have the time to mentor you, she offers to have one of her graduate students mentor you. Your project goes well, and the following fall, you decide to apply to STS. Since you'd never met the graduate student previously, you decide not to disclose the relationship between your mentor and your aunt. So this one is very similar to the last one, but slight change and has the same poll questions. Okay, I think it's mostly slowing down, so we can close this one. So yeah, similarly to the last one, of course, use the relationships that you have, if you can. But again, it's only appropriate if this is disclosed that you had a relationship, that your aunt had a relationship to your mentor. So yeah, this is similar to that one, and 80% of you were in agreement. So glad to see that. Okay. Our final case study. So you or your family member paid a service to connect you to your research mentor. When asked to disclose any payments related to your research project, you don't want to make it look like you had a leg up. So you decide to answer no, because technically you didn't pay the fee, or because you did not pay a mentor. So we have three similar choices. It's appropriate. It's only appropriate if you disclose that your mentor relationship was due to a paid service, or it's not appropriate under any circumstance. Okay, I think most of you have answered. So again, this is not against the rules to have a be part of a paid mentorship program, but again, it's only appropriate if you disclose that your mentor relationship was due to a paid service. So yeah, this is something that absolutely would need to be disclosed in your STS application, and would be looked upon not very favorably if it were to be discovered after you submitted your application and you did not say that you paid for your program.
That's
And
right.
so,
And just to add to that, this is one example of this within this vein. The way the questions around this are worded in our rules book and application, there are many examples. Those are not the only examples out there that probably exist in the world. You get the sense of this question. You're just supposed to be honest about if funds were exchanged for any level of support, not just for connecting you to a mentor, but say someone reviewed your research paper. Even if that someone just was looking for edits to fix, like even if it's AI, like Grammarly, you should share that. That's not a paid thing, but you get the drift, is that any kind of support that costs money, you need to be sharing here. There are a lot of reasons for this. It does not mean we're going to scrutinize your project more heavily, but it does explain connections sometimes, and it might save you down the line of like, oh, you match in our plagiarism screening to similar projects that, you know, we eventually look at them and they're different, but they might be a flag right off the bat because that's what the lab does. This also applies to like high schools where everybody's working with like oysters or something like that. But you might see similar kind of projects out of similar labs. So when you're honest in disclosing these kind of things, it can also help save you sometimes when we do all of our screenings and integrity checks. So again, the more you can share, the better. We just want to make sure everybody's on the same page about what went on. And that's what this is about.
Yeah, so to build on those last 3 case studies and provide some additional information, I just wanted to go over conflict of interest with all of you. So what is a conflict of interest? This is when someone's personal interests or relationships impact their actions or compromise their judgment or decisions. So this could be things like family, friends, financial factors, like that last one, social factors. So transparency is crucial when dealing with actual and perceived conflicts of interest. Appearance is just as important as reality. So just because your mom or dad works in a lab, you know, and you're working in a totally different field, that might look like a conflict of interest to somebody else, even though it's not. But just letting us know, you know, hey, they work in a related field, but not the same field, but you know, so always disclosing, maybe even over disclosing is important, because like I said, appearance is just as important as reality. So some things to consider with conflicts of interest is personal relationships. Is your parent or your family member serving as your mentor? Have they facilitated that relationship with your mentor? Has your access to a lab been due to one of these familiar relationships? And has this maybe impacted approval or safety processes? Somebody approved your project because they know your mom. Things like that are important to consider, and we want to make sure that everything is done above board, but also for all of your safety. Another thing is financial and research-based conflicts. Did you participate in a mentorship or academic-based program, whether it was paid or free? And as a company or an organization providing significant funding to your project, whether that's directly to you or to the lab that you're a part of, things like that. Also, I know we have some mentors on this call, so how to teach integrity to your mentees and something to keep in mind for the mentees with your own mentor. Spend some class time on case studies like these or scenarios and have your class discuss, because maybe this is things that they haven't considered or haven't had to think about previously and haven't thought if this is something that's, you know, involved with scientific integrity or is potentially misconduct. Having a checks and balances throughout a research project to stay in tune with where your student is. Check their logbooks. I remember that my grad school advisor would check my lab notebook pretty frequently, and if it was not up to date and fully filled out, we had some nice discussions that only had to happen a few times. But then I made sure to keep all of that up to date. And when I was at the NIH, that's a government document now. So I had to sign that and date that every day and have my mentor sign it and date it as well when he checked it every day. And then we moved to an online lab notebook system that had even more checks and balances in it. And that's something that if you all want to go into science is something that you can look forward to is being on the absolute up and up with your logbooks. Having conference calls with mentors is important. Having, you know, if you're not directly involved in your students' projects, knowing what they are doing and who they're doing it with. having a summary narrative, so whether that's verbal or written, of progress in a day or a week or month. Using detection tools as your budget and time allows. We know that there's various tools out there to check for scientific integrity that are a range of prices and all take time, but is something to consider. And also things like considering what type of peer review is possible and productive for your students. So I think we have maybe a little bit of time for questions. But before that, I will pass it back to talk about resources, and then maybe we can go back to questions.
Awesome. We definitely can. First, just a huge thank you to Dr. DeLuca that I know everyone in the chat shares for sharing all your expertise. And our thanks as well to all of you for joining us. Like we said at the top of the call, we do have many resources available for anyone looking for answers to their questions, just in case we don't get to yours today, or maybe you have a very specific situation that's better discussed over email. So first, if you do need more information about scientific integrity and what our organization's approaches and perspectives on this are, you can find the link to our scientific integrity page there at the top of your screen. Our program homepage and application pages are also available here. That's where you'll find all the information you need to apply or to support your students in applying. We will take a minute just as well to remind everyone that the application deadline is November 6th of this year at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. All application materials, including recommendations, are due by that date and time. We do have a tech support deadline that occurs 24 hours prior, where if you contact us by that time with any kind of troubleshooting request, system issue, we guarantee a resolution by the deadline. So definitely in your best interest to submit early and to remind your recommenders to stay on top of it too. The best place to reach us for any kind of issue or question is also here on the screen, sts@societyforscience.org. Many members of our staff man this throughout the week to guarantee you the fastest and most accurate response. And I think folks can still continue to pop things into the chat if you have questions.
As we give people a chance to submit a few questions, I wanted to drop a few big picture tips for you that will support your application in a variety of ways, but in particular on this front. We don't want projects to get disqualified for unnecessary reasons. And so it's important to remember that honesty is the best policy. You know your research better than anyone, including ChatGPT. So don't let them mess things up for you. Don't give anybody a reason to come after you and say that your research is fake or that something is flawed or that you've stolen or not cited. It's important to be careful and to be accurate. It's better to have done less slowly and well than to have done more quickly, and that's wrong, right? We want to make sure what we're submitting is true, even if you have less to share. And that's the thing about STS. And all of these competitions also out there, we are not looking for more. We're not looking for who has done like the most research or even like who's done like the most groundbreaking research. We do want to find the students who've done it correctly. And that includes all of this scientific integrity stuff that Dr. DeLuca has chatted through today. Our main goal in the work that we do is to set you up as future scientists, engineers, mathematicians. We want our alumni of all of our programs to be known as the best out there. And to be the best, that means you also have to be the most honest and the most accurate. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this session today, is just to get on the same page and help everybody do that. Also, like, no one is perfect. So when it comes to answering our questions, honesty truly is the best policy. Give us all the context that you can, help us understand your situation so that we can give you a fair shot. With that, I do see there are some questions in the chat. If we can get up to date here. I think the first one I see from Omao is about, I think, the lab notebooks and how those would be monitored, and I think that's just a case by case with project scientific mentor, right? So Dr. DeLuca gave examples from her experience, but that certainly could vary. So you'll want to chat with your mentor there. From Karen, moving forward, how can we educate student researchers before they begin their projects? Great question. I think one, you can inform yourselves of the rules updates to all of our programs. We do set the standard for Science Talent Search and for the International Science and Engineering Fair of student research rules on an annual basis. Those rules do change a little bit from year to year. So reading the rules books from start to finish makes you an educated resource for the students that you're working with. And then beyond that, we do have our scientific integrity page that Elaine has mentioned. That's another great place to start. Sharing this webinar with your students in future years will also help them with some case studies, but asking them to similarly think through their project and describe every single step as if they're talking to someone who doesn't have any idea what they're talking about or how they would approach doing such thing. Everything from I went to this website on this date, the more detail you can have them record, the better. And that sets them up to be able to do things like answer our application questions in a confident and correct way. But I'll also turn to Elaine and Jenna and see what other advice that they have. And if Michelle, our boss, is on the call, then she might also have some advisement here. But continue to check our resources. I think that's one of the best things we can recommend.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also just kind of starting educating them early, educating your students early and making sure that they're aware. Like I think I said at one point, so that, this isn't something where they didn't realize that this was a case that might be scientific misconduct. So yeah, I think I second Allie, but also say, yeah, start as early as you can.
Then I see some questions about the best way to how students can present research they were involved in over the past few years and how it's related to the research they are working on now and submitting to STS. And this might be a project specific question. I see a follow-up here. What is the best and clearest way to present this? If you're talking about the student research, it depends in what format you're hoping to present it. For Science Talent Search, Elaine has dropped the link to our application. It is a 20-page research paper. There are some guidelines available on our website for that, and also an application that's about like a college application. For ISEF, you'll want to find your local affiliated science fair. And usually there's a poster presentation, but it depends on the fair how you can gain entry and what steps are required to gain entry. Sometimes some of those fairs even have like a paper competition to be able to do a poster presentation. So it truly depends, but I might start with your local fair or your high school. Is there any way we can upload pages of our lab notebook in the application portal? No, for Science Talent Search, you will be asked to upload your 20-page research paper, which is to be formatted like a publication. And again, I would check our requirements. There are also going to be requirements to upload any paperwork of pre-approvals that you have undergone to do your project. If you're like, what does that mean? We have recorded 3 rules-related sessions earlier this summer that are specific to projects that worked with humans, vertebrate animals, and PHBAs and hazardous materials. So I would recommend you check those out or reference our rules book, because if you have an IRB pre-approval and your IRB said, oh, you also need to collect photo release, then we're going to ask to see, some of those documents within task 3 of the application. So best thing to do if you've not yet done so is 1, open your application, and 2, go through task 3. We always encourage adults, you are welcome to make a fake application. Just tell us that it's fake in the first task, and go through with your student the task 3 form that will tell you more about what paperwork is required for them to upload based on the type of research that they've done. So typically students are not uploading lab notebook pages into their application. Maybe there's a circumstance where that would be appropriate, but we are strict about that 20-page limit for the actual paper, and that impacts kind of what happens from there. For a student with a first author paper, the paper still needs to be formatted to meet STS, so it will be cosmetically a little different than the original paper. Should the student mention all other authors on the title page? Does the author note include? Yeah, so a couple of notes about this. We get asked, probably one of our most frequently asked questions in our help inbox is, can I submit published research to STS? And on the flip side, do I have to submit published research to STS? The truth is it's about 50-50. That carries through even up to the top 300 and top 40 levels. Students are doing both. Our recommendation typically is that if you're the first author or the sole author of a published paper, then you can submit that to STS. If you are a little further down the list, we typically do not recommend it. Even if you have a lot of authors, we don't typically recommend it. The reason being is we need to know what was your contribution to the group work. And so within task 4 of the application, student will, 1, tell us this research has been published, yes or no. If yes, we're going to ask, were you the sole author or were there other authors? And then you list them there and you can tell us all about this. You can also do the same if you have a pending publication that might come out between when the application is submitted and results are announced. So we can be on the lookout for that as well. So 1, that's kind of how it works. And then 2, to more specifically answer this question, if it's cosmetically a little different, to meet our heads up new image citation rules. If you are an experienced mentor and you're like, what does that mean? Check out the rules book, check out the research report guidelines. We have new stricter image citation rules. So because of that, we anticipate fewer students will submit the actual publication as is, because we want you to make sure you're giving us the information we need to be able to make sure you're on the up and up. So yes, totally fine if it's cosmetically a little different. This also happens when people are trying to fit our page limit. And then mentioning the other authors on the title page, yes, that is helpful, but you also have opportunity to do that in task 4. What would be the best response for case study 11? Which one was this?
I think that was the open source information one. For that, I would say just disclose. So like if it's something that you got from another source, make sure you cite it. Just to be safe. Better safe than sorry, I would say, for that one.
Yeah. And then Michelle Arglitten, our boss, chiming in here to, I guess, further clarify that there are a lot of differences between ISEF and STS. We did a webinar on that earlier this summer, so you can check that out if you're an ISEF alum who wants to apply to STS, or you're super familiar with ISEF but less so with STS. Check that one out because we get into a lot of detail. But this is an important one. ISEF, when it comes down to it, looks for the best research done in the world by a high school student in a given year. So a student can have worked on a project for only 12 months within an 18-month period for ISEF. For STS, we are looking more holistically at the whole student, and we are looking at really their full high school career for future leaders in STEM. We're looking for who has the most potential to like change the world, basically. And so for us, you can submit research you've done in any year of high school, like your freshman year project, you think that's your best one or it's your only one, go for it. That's great. If you've worked on a project for 4 full years, you can submit all of that. We don't need continuation paperwork for STS like you would need for ISEF. If you have it, a lot of people will share it. That's up to you. And I think that's all of our questions. Any other questions here today? We might finish right on time. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. If, again, you have any questions, please do feel free to email our team at any time. And we're all in this together. So this is, we said, an evolving landscape. We always appreciate conversation on this topic. And we're so glad to have Dr. DeLuca with us to really enhance our efforts, which were already very strong. We take scientific integrity very seriously at the society. And we wish all of you student researchers the best of luck. both with your STS application, but also with your project and for wanting to do the right thing. And that's why you came here today. So thank you and good luck.